Prabhu, could you please write the verse on the board? Okay. What verse is it in? Yep, it's text 5. This one. Yeah, yeah. Temple is like this, it's evident winter is approaching.
Yes.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Radha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shri Gauratai ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Nitai Gaur Chaitanya Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Prasadi Nirvishesha Shubhavani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritam
Narayanam Namaskrityam
Naram
Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayasha Patreshu
Nashtaprayasha Vatreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki.
Hare Krishna. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, entitled Chanting, the song sung by Lord Shiva. And today we shall be reciting text 5. Please repeat after me. Antardhano Nabhasvatyam Havidhanam Avindata Ya Indram Ashvahartaram Vidvanapi Na Jagnivam Antardhano Nabhasvatyam Avirdhanam Avindata Ya Indramashvahartaram Vidvanapina Jagnivan Antardhano Nabhasvatyam Avirdhanam Avindata Ya Indramashvahartaram Vidvan Apina Jagnivan. Please chant.
Antardhano navasvatyam Havirdhanam avindata Ya Indram ashvahartaram Vidvanapina jagnivan
Antardhano Nabhasvatyam Avirdhanam Avindata Ya Indramashvahartaram Vidvanapina Jagnivan Antardhano Nabhasvatyam
Havirdhanam avindata
Avirdhanam Avindata
Ya Indram ashvahartaram
Ya Indramashvahartaram
Vidvanapina janivam.
Thank you. The word by word translation. Antardhanaha. The king of the name Antardhana.
The king of the name Antardhana
Nabhasvatyam. Unto his wife Nabhasvati.
Unto his wife Nabhasvati
Havirdhanam. Of the name Havirdhanam. Avindata. Obtained. Yaha. Who? Indra. King Indra. Ashvaharta. Who was stealing the horse of his father. Vidvanapi. Although he knew it. Na Jagnivam. Did not kill. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation reads as follows. Maharaj Antardhana had another wife named Nabhasvati, and by her he was happy to beget another son named Havirdhana. Since Maharaj Antardhana was very liberal, he did not kill Indra, while the demigod was stealing his father's horse at the sacrifice. Purport. It is understood from various scriptures and Puranas that the king of heaven, Indra, was very expert in stealing and kidnapping. He could steal anything without being visible to the proprietor, and he could kidnap anyone's wife without being detected. Once he raped the wife of Gautama Muni by using his disappearing art, and similarly by becoming invisible he stole the horse of Maharaj Prithu. Although in human society such activities are considered abominable, the demigod Indra was not considered to be degraded by them. Although Antardhana could understand that King Indra was stealing the horse from his father, he did not kill Indra, for he knew that if one who is very powerful sometimes commits an abominable act, it should be disregarded. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated in chapter 9, text 30, Apiche Suduracharo Bhajate Vamananyabhak Sadhuriva Samantavya Samyak Vyavasito Visa. Thus the Lord says that even if a devotee commits an abominable act, he should be considered a sadhu or a pious man because of his unflinching devotion to the Lord. The devotees of the Lord never willingly commit any sinful activities, but sometimes they commit something abominable due to their previous habits. Such acts should not be taken very seriously. However, because the devotees of the Lord are very powerful, whether they are on the heavenly planets or on this planet, if by chance they commit something abominable, it should not be taken into account, but should be overlooked. Omagyanatmirandhasya dhanandanashalakya chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dati Swaham Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanyutam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitam Sram Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nidhi Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharani Nirvishesha Shrivani Vajshati Sathani Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitani Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktyavataram Bhaktakhya Namani Bhakta Shaktikam Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gaurati Shri Namaha Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Parabhadraya Spatrapyam Jagannathaya Te Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Antardhano Navasatyam Avedhanam Avidita Yaindra Madhahartaram Vidvanapina Jagnivan. Maharaj Antardhana had another wife named Nabhaswati, and by her he was happy to beget another son named Havidhana. Since Maharaj Antardhana was very liberal, he did not kill Indra while the demigod was still stealing his father's horse at the sacrifice. Hare Krishna. So, the point being made here is quite a significant yet bewildering one. How, although a devotee may be committing something abominable, it should be overlooked or not taken into account. So that can be quite difficult to digest. How can you just let it be? How can you overlook it? That was my first reaction when I heard about this as a child, about this shloka that Prabhupada also quotes, 9:30, Apichet Suduracharo, that regardless of the abominable act that a devotee commits, our respect towards him or her should not diminish, and such acts should be overlooked. And again here Prabhupada is making this point. It's interesting how the verse, the purport begins with the abominable acts of Indra. And although Indra was a demigod, quite a powerful one, yes, he had his own fair share of abominable acts, quite a few things. And we know And also Indra is known for his pride, and he kept on committing so many sinful activities in a way. For example, here it is mentioned how he raped the wife of Gautama Muni. So he was a rapist, he was a thief, but still he's Indra, the king of heaven. It's quite a bewildering thing to understand. And also the case of Indra is because the thing is, whatever is cited in Srimad Bhagavatam or in our scriptures, it is for our learning. And also I was reflecting how I can personally learn from what's given in this verse. And Indra, he is the king of heaven, and simultaneously he has many potencies, many powers. But it is sad how he uses them. He misuses his power, and it is said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And such is the case of Indra, where he has such potencies, but it is misused in raping and stealing. So thus we have to also be careful that when we have certain kind of power or authority, to always be careful how we make use of it. That is the learning from Indra. And however, the exemplary personality here exemplified is Maharaj Antardhana. So Antardhana is actually the son of Maharaj Prithu Vijitashva. So Maharaj Prithu had five sons, and the eldest was Vijitashva. And Vijitashva is also known as Antardhana. And why is he known as Antardhana? Because he also got the potency to disappear. He could be invisible. Any guesses who gave him this power to become invisible? The hint is in the purport. Only if you have the power, you can give the power. So who had the power of disappearing?
Indra.
Yes. Thank you, Asu. Indra. Indra, although inimical, he gave the blessing of becoming invisible to Antardhana. Why? Because Indra was pleased. So this takes us again back to the very beginning, not very beginning, but middle of this episode, where King Prithu was doing the Ashwamedha Yagya, the 100 horse sacrifices, and it is only Indra who came to power through this performance of 100 sacrifices. So when Maharaj Prithu reached 99, what did Indra do? He stole the horse. Such a rascal. He stole the horse so that the sacrifice could not be completed. And then we know that Brahma came and he instructed Prithu Maharaj to not act upon this, because it was a moment of agitation that you were trying to do something. You have the power to do it, but somebody takes it away from you. Why? Being criticizing, Although you have the good and you have the prowess, out of envy somebody wants to deprive you of it or criticize you for it. So such was the character of Indra. And such is the character of envy also. And this is also a depiction of insecurity, that when one is insecure, then the natural instinct is to curb the other, or to pull the other back, or to make the other feel in a way also guilty for their qualities. So King Indra had such a character. But we see the exemplary character of his son, of the son of Maharaj Prithu, it is Vijitashva. Vijitashva knew that this is wrong what Indra is doing. He had the duty as a Kshatriya also to rebel, and he tried also, but then what stopped him? He's let Indra go thinking, and even the saintly persons around Vijitashva were telling him this is abominable what Indra is doing. But what did Vijitashva do? He refrained from acting upon it. He let Indra go. Why? Out of respect. Such a exemplary quality that you see that something wrong is happening, or the so-called powerful, the so-called king, so-called senior is wrong, but you still overlook it. And on Sunday, I was having this discussion with Govind Prabhu, my senior god brother, about this aspect of overlooking something. Even if you see something wrong, even if it's done by a senior or somebody in authority, you overlook it. It's because I was saying that we don't look at it. He said, no, actually, you look at it, but you overlook it. That you take notice of such a thing, but it does not matter. It does not affect your respect. So this story of Maharaj Antardhana is a story of respect. And this entire chapter, actually, the chapter 5, is such an important chapter because it's a chapter of personal application. Because in the future, we will also have, in the coming description, we have the description of Prachina Bari and the story of Puranjana, where the body is discussed as a city of 9 gates. So this chapter is really one of the most important chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's a chapter where we can be highly introspective. We can really personally apply whatever we learn. And also, I was also thinking of how I can personally apply what is being taught here, because I have a tendency to, if I see something, I speak up, or if I see something, I have this urge to correct it. But from this chapter, I can learn actually from the very exemplary character of Maharaj Antardhana how, sometimes you have to let it go. You have to see things but overlook it. And that is what makes you dear to Krishna, actually. It may be something like, of course, there is a boundary of how much you can look and how much you can overlook and what you overlook. But the very fact that you are able to transgress this, because this morning I was listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, where he was saying that if you're born in this material world, a material world of duality, it is natural to have this liking and disliking. There will always be this wrong way, the right way. There will always be people you like, people you don't like. You can change places, you can change circumstances, but this is the only constant that will stay. That there will be things you will like, there will be things you won't like. And this is something you cannot forego. Similarly, in our personal application, at least I was thinking, in my personal application also, there will always be things I will like, always be things I will not like. There will always be things which I will think this is the right way and this is the wrong way. So the Vaishnava, in order to become dear to Krishna, what does a Vaishnava do? A Vaishnava learns to overlook. And this overlooking is not on the basis of some mundane, whimsical principle. It's on the basis of Vaishnava principles, on the basis of Shastra. So when we want to develop this quality of how to overlook, we have to really delve deeper into Shastra. Because sometimes, there can be a culture, don't correct anybody. No, that's not our culture. Our culture is, yes, you give feedback, you give correction, but how you give correction and on what you give correction and how much correction you give. So our culture is not to say all the time, and our culture is not to say not at all. There are these two extremes, that you correct all the time or you don't correct at all. And of course, in our community also, we have these two extremes. There are devotees who correct all the time, and there are devotees who don't correct at all. But these are they're both actually anarthas, to be honest. We have to really develop a balance of how to correct and what to correct and how much to correct on the basis of Shastra. So, because both are actually escapisms, you correct too much to escape a certain fallacy, and you don't correct also to escape certain fallacy. But what we have to develop is Shastra Chakshu, the vision through Shastra, where we can discern in which moments to correct and which not to correct. And here, the example is being given of how Antardhana, or Vijitashva, received the blessings of Indra. Indra was, so to speak, an enemy. But seeing the exemplary character of how he overlooked what Indra was doing, Indra became so pleased. Then Indra recognized the high quality, the high position of Antardhana. And then he gave him the boon of becoming invisible. Such a powerful boon. He actually gave him a quality he had. Firstly, he was envious and he did not want them to succeed because they would take his position or his power. But after being pleased and seeing the excellent character of King Antardhana, he gave him what he had. So also we have to praise Indra here, that he was able to see the good. So basically here, through the story or the character of Maharaj Antardhana, we learn how to see the good in individuals. And actually Govinda Prabhu was also highlighting this aspect of overlooking. He said, what does it mean to overlook? Okay, you know this is wrong, this is not correct, does not mean you justify it by saying, okay, it's a senior or it's an authority is doing, it's okay. No. You don't have to justify it. You take note of it, okay, this is wrong, but you choose to meditate on the good. You choose to meditate on the good of the person, you choose to meditate on the good of the action. So this is the very fine nuanced line of how to overlook. And it is, I would even say it's a slippery slope. So one has to be very careful of how to overlook also. And through this example here, Prabhupada cites this text from chapter 9, text 30, where he says how even if a devotee commits an abominable act, he should be considered a sadhu or a pious man. Why? Because of his unflinching faith and devotion to the Lord. That is the marker that if a person is chanting the holy name of the Lord and has unflinching faith and devotion to the Lord, he is a devotee and considered to be a sadhu despite the abominable act. And when His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Maharaj was here, he made this point, how rare it is that somebody is chanting Hare Krishna. In this day and age, how rare it is that someone is a devotee. So even if a devotee is committing something, so to speak, abominable, we should still be able to have some space in our heart to consider the person a sadhu. And we see in our movement so many devotees, they left, they looped and then they came back. So does that mean that we don't respect them? No, we respect them still. Why? On the basis of this principle. So this aspect of respecting is actually something we can learn from Maharaj Antardhana. How regardless of whether, in whichever position one is, whatever one has done, our respect should be unshaken. And that is what will make us dear to Lord Krishna. And also there is this aspect of accidental fall down. Because if you listen to Srila Prabhupada's lecture on Ajamila, and in the story of Ajamila, it is Canto 3? No, Ajamila. 6. Canto 6. The story of Ajamila. Prabhupada very often mentions this point of accidental fall down. And then I was wondering, because Prabhupada says that Ajamila, he was a Brahmana, very well situated Brahmana, and then he had a fall down. Despite that, the Vishnu Dutas came to rescue him. And it's such a bewildering thing, because then he gets married and to a prostitute, and he steals, and such an abominable life. But still he was rescued by the servant of the Lord. Why is it? Prabhupada describes it as accidental fall down. And then I asked His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj at the Bhakti retreat, because I was listening to his lectures at that time. So I took advantage and asked him, what does this mean, this accidental fall down? And Jayadvaita Maharaj said that actually when Ajamila went out, he wasn't looking to look at the Shudra and Shudrani and get attracted or fall down. But accidentally he saw and he got bewildered. So this is accidental fall down. That a devotee is not looking to fall down, or not looking out for Maya or to fall down or to engage in the forceful activities. But mistakenly, accidentally it happens. So this is accidental fall down. And what is very interesting here is that Prabhupada makes into this point that one may commit sinful activities because of their previous habits. And we have so many examples. For example, there is this example of Bilva Mangala Thakur, right? That he, everybody knows the story of Bilva Mangala Thakur? No. Okay. So Bilva Mangala Thakur was this wealthy person. And let's start from the middle of the story. So his father had passed away, and he was at the funeral rites of his father, Bilva Mangala. But he was reminded of the prostitute he has to visit. So he said, oh, please hurry up with my father's rights, I have to go for something. And then it was torrential rain and it was pouring so hard, and then Bilvamangala had to cross a river to meet the prostitute. And what does he do? He sees a dead body is floating on the river, he catches onto the dead body and then he crosses the river like that. He was so desperate. And then he reaches the house, and this prostitute, she thought her name is Chintamani, and she thought, oh, today Bilvamangala is not coming, it's such heavy rain and it's quite late, so she locked the door, the main gate. He climbed the wall to go to her. And then when he saw her, and she saw, Bilvamangala, you are here, how did you make it? And Bilvamangala then told Chintamani the entire story of how he made it. And Chintamani gasped. And she said, only if you had such unflinching devotion and dedication to the Lord, then your life would have been successful. And that was a turning point for Bilvamangala. Then he realized, actually, yeah. And then he took to devotional service. He tried to transform his life. And he started engaging in chanting of the holy name and practicing devotional service. And this was going on, and then Bilvamangala, because of his old habits, was again attracted to a young girl. And this young wife of a Brahmana, I think he was attracted to, and she was very beautiful to look at. And he started following her, And this woman was going back home, and she went to her husband and said, there is this gentleman following me and doesn't look quite right, because it seems that he's following me because of some funny reason. And the Brahmana then says, so sir, why are you following my wife? And then he says that, no, but I just wanted to see your wife. And then Bilvamangala felt so ashamed actually of what he was doing. Because the Brahmana, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, the Brahmana, I think, said, oh, you want to enjoy my wife? The Brahmana said, okay, serve him, he's a Vaishnava, or something of that sort. And then Bilvamangala felt so ashamed that he said, my mother, he actually addressed her in such a respectful way, can you please give me the hairpin from your hair? And she said, why? No, please give me this. And you know what Bilvamangala did? He pierced his eyes. He blinded himself because his consciousness was, I see something attractive and I'm becoming lusty, so let me pierce these eyes which are the cause of lust and dedicate myself to devotional service. So the story of Bilvamangala is a very significant story for us to realize how, if one has an accidental fall down, still one should engage in prayashchitta. Doesn't mean we literally pierce our eyes, but we really reflect and have remorse for our action and take to devotional service seriously. That's the turning point for a Vaishnava. And we see that because of his old habits, previous habits, Bilvamangala again kind of had an accidental fall down. But this is how he repented for it, and this is why Bilvamangala is actually respected as an acharya. We could have said, oh, he's a prostitute hunter. No, but we respect him as an acharya. Why? Because of his very principle of his unflinching devotion to the Lord. So this is a very rich tradition of Vaishnavism, that we don't just go with this right and wrong, with this watertight compartment. We really go to the depth of the matter. So Vaishnava is supposed to be liberal and deep, and this is how a Vaishnava looks at different circumstances. And also as a Vaishnava, when we are liberal, we learn not to judge. I think it's the story of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who was chewing, do you know that, who was it? Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who was having this very opulent life, and he was chewing betel nuts. And I think Gadadhar Pandit then came to see him. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was renowned. Gadadhar Pandit, he heard that there is this devotee named Pundarik Vidyanidhi, and he has such devotion, very elevated. So Gadadhar Pandit went to meet him, and he expected he would be sitting and crying and chanting. But instead, he saw Pundarik Vidyanidhi in this royal throne, chewing pan or betel nuts, and people dancing for him. He had a spittoon where he was spitting, and people, adoring him with the chamara. So Gadadhar Pandit went and he was like, "What is this?" And I can't recall who was accompanying Gadadhar Pandit.
Govinda or Mukunda or some
Hmm.
one of these devotees.
Yeah, one of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates was accompanying Gadadhar Pandit. And then Gadadhar Pandit said, "This is what you got me to? This is your definition of an elevated devotee?" And then Gadadhar Pandit was told, if you chant this one verse, Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai, Jai Shri Jagannath ki Jai. So Gadadhar Pandit was told that if you chant the glories of the Lord, some verses, then you see. And as soon as that was done, Pundarik Vidyanidhi just lost control. He started crying vehemently in separation of the Lord. And this was the sign actually. And I think Manida Prabhu was making this point of how Krishna consciousness, the internal and external, is the same. In the sense that bhakti is not judged by what you look from the outside. You can put tilak and I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a song where he says that in the Kali Yuga, some demons wear tilak, And sometimes when I look into my heart, I feel like, yes, that's really my description, that I'm on the outside, I may look so saintly and really like a Vaishnava, but inside what's going on is so demoniac, And so what matters in Krishna consciousness is really the inside, the motivation of why you're doing what you're doing. And every step you take in Krishna consciousness, it's so important to realize why I'm doing this. The motivation is so important. So therefore, as Vaishnavas, we have to be so careful not to judge another Vaishnava, like, oh, he or she is doing this and it's because of this. And so we can very quickly, because of our material perception, fall into this trap of judging somebody else. And we have to be so careful not to do that. And this is the principle also we learn, to how to not lose respect. And it is Kavi Karnapura, and I think it is in Prema Vivarta, if I'm not wrong, the 4 degrees of disrespect. Devyapur, do you remember it's Prema Vivarta, where he describes 4 degrees, Avagya, Upeksha. Basically, Kavi Karnapura, if I'm not wrong, it is Prema Vivarta, where he describes that if you disrespect a person, a Vaishnava, or even any person, what are the 4 consequences? So the first degree of disrespect is Avagya. Avagya is what? Looking down upon somebody. So if you are looking down upon somebody, then what happens? You begin to disrespect the person, and the result of that is you begin to see everyone as a pretender. You look down upon this person, and then you start to see the similar quality in everybody, and you think everybody is a pretender. That's Avagya. And what is the result of that? You lose simplicity of the heart. So as devotees, we have to be so careful. So this fact that actually we should not disrespect, api chet suduracharo, this fact that we should give respect or we should not disrespect is actually for our benefit. Why? Because we see Kavi Karnapura describes what is our benefit in respecting and what is our loss if we disrespect anybody. So first is Avagya, looking down upon, and what happens as a result? We lose simplicity of our heart. And once you lose simplicity of our heart, you know what happens. We become so complicated and so many anarthas take place, and then Krishna cannot take seat in that heart. Second degree of disrespect is upeksha, to neglect. And what happens? You just neglect the person. The first, you look down upon them, or that person is like this, like that, and then you neglect the person. that, oh, this person is not worthy of my respect. And then what happens? When you neglect a person, that means you're neglecting the presence of Krishna in the heart. That gradually you begin to neglect the presence of Krishna as a whole. That is the consequence of upeksha. Third degree of disrespect is dvesha, means to hate. So gradually the degree is increasing. First you look down, then you neglect their presence, then what happens? You hate them. That's the third step. And what happens when there is dvesha? You hate the person, and then eventually you lose faith in Krishna. That is a result. And what happens is when you begin to hate people, you see everybody as an enemy. That's a natural consequence. You feel like, oh, everybody hates me and everybody is my enemy. And as a result of this, you lose faith in Krishna. And the last degree is ninda, which is to insult. So after hatred comes insult. And in this insult, what happens? Vaishnava Aparadha. Bhakti, I mean, this is anyway, all these stages are Vaishnava Aparadha. And in this stage, when you insult, the Bhakti Kripa dies. That means Bhakti is finished. And Bhakti gets, I wouldn't say Bhakti is finished, Bhakti is so covered that you don't have access to it. It's Krishna locks it up and throws the key in a pond you will never swim to. That's what happens, you know. And also actually in my personal life, I've really seen, because you know, of course, all these years you interact with so many individuals, and yeah, you I mean, at least I can speak. I have had instances where I had disrespect for somebody because of something they did, and I gradually see how, I mean, especially there is one relationship in my life where I can actually see how this stage has happened, you know, where it grew from looking down upon, or I wouldn't say exactly looking down upon, but really if a person does something and you don't overlook it, and you're like, oh, but this is wrong, and the next step, and the next step, and the next step, you lose simplicity of the heart, and then you neglect the person, and then, you know, and eventually, I mean, so far it's not come as bad as insult, but it's come to the stage of hatred, you know. So you really go this stage by stage, and then you realize actually that, yeah, this is not conducive. This principle of overlooking and giving respect is maybe difficult, may not make sense, but it's the only way to go. It's really the only way to go. Because at least in my personal life, I've seen how if you have, I mean, you may have a principle-based approach, and you may think, oh, this person is doing wrong, and you know, I should not tolerate it. But gradually you see that actually, when I read actually Kavi Kanapurna's this description, I was thinking, wow, actually, this is happening, you know. It's actually happening. So, what is, as a Vaishnava, then what should I do? I should tolerate. It may sound unfair, and to me, I'm still struggling. It is so unfair. It will sound unfair, but that's what you have to do. That's the best thing you can do for yourself, for the situation, for the other. That's the best thing, to just tolerate. And I really liked once Krishna Premarupa who was making this point. One thing is to tolerate, and the other thing is to accept. And this point of overlooking is acceptance, you know. As Vaishnavas, we have to be accepting. That's the quality of a Vaishnava, to be accepting as a person. So this, when you become accepting, you can overlook also. So what is acceptance? Actually comes from compassion. And compassion essentially is not just for equal level, or compassion can be for your seniors, for your authority, compassion can be for your equals, compassion can be for your juniors, everybody. So Vaishnava is naturally supposed to develop compassion. And compassion leads to this aspect of being able to accept, being able to overlook. And when you overlook, why? On the basis of respect. So we see this principle that one should respect is actually for our own benefit. And therefore, as Vaishnavas, we should strive for it, that we are able to learn this quality. I mean, for me on a personal level, it was very nice to meditate on this aspect of just accepting, okay, this is the situation, overlooking and respecting. Because one thing I came to realize is that, I mean, this chapter is a lot about self reflection actually. That I've noticed one thing that whenever, I have disagreements, or if my relationship with Vaishnavas is not solid, not a very happy, nice, very nice relationship, my chanting gets affected. And I think it was here Shanta Maharaj who said that this is when you see that your sadhana, your chanting is not as it used to be, something is off. And mostly it's in relationships to Vaishnavas. So it's so important actually to have a clean and clear heart. Because someone can on your face be like, I'm your well wisher, but give you a really hard time. I mean, I have personally also had those experiences. When people came up to me, I'm your well wisher, but da 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 da. And still, despite that, you have to choose to respect and overlook. Why? For the sake of your sadhana, for the sake of your spiritual life. Does not mean, this point is very nuanced actually. You can respect, but have a grudge in your heart. No, but you have to really be able to look at the good in them, have to be really know why you are respecting them. It's not a superficial thing. It's not that you try so hard, like with the constipated look, that I'm trying to respect. But in your heart, you don't really respect them. That's not the way to do it. It has to really come from the heart, which means you meditate on their good, and you can still have your distance, you can still have, your way of doing things, but still you respect them for who they are and what they are doing, and for the very fact that they are devotees. So this chapter is such a nice meditative chapter where we can learn so much about how to respect despite differences. And this is what means actually to cooperate. Srila Prabhupada said, you will please me by cooperation. And this is how we can really learn the principle of cooperation and in our service to Srila Prabhupada, and really become dear to Srila Prabhupada and therefore become dear to Krishna. Thank you very much. Kankara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai, Gopimanand ki. We can have questions or comments if there are any burning questions. Otherwise, or any comments. Anyone would like to share something? It's there, next to the mridanga.
Thank you. Nice balanced presentation. And then you approach from all angles. And just wanted to mention that this Vaishnava etiquette is so crucial, so essential in this whole process of correcting, overlooking. Vaishnava etiquette means it's a culture. Know your position, consider seniority or juniority. It's without knowing how to apply Vaishnava culture, you cannot really do it properly.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're sure to make some mistakes if you don't consider this carefully. Just a comment.
Yeah, thank you. On Sunday I was speaking with Govind Prabhu about this also, this aspect of, and he also mentioned this point about Vaishnava etiquette. And then we were discussing that His Bhakti Swami Maharaj would always say that it's better to, work on yourself rather than work on others. It's something he would always say, that it's better to really, in terms of whatever circumstances, he was giving some examples of how Maharaj was the GBC of certain temple, and some devotees were really doing funny things. He could have thrown them out, but he was not a person to throw them out. He said, who is a leader? A leader is the one who walks with the slowest. That's a leader. So, and that's also Vaishnava, the one who is there with the slowest and kind of, taking them ahead. And he was making the point that although there were these, when Maharaj became the GBC of this one place, there were these individuals who were doing these funny things. Instead of throwing them out, he changed them. He tolerated it, and gradually, I mean, of course, it needs purity also of intention, purpose, personality, but he changed them. So instead of really correcting them through words, he corrected them through behavior. So yeah, this aspect of Vaishnava etiquette is so important, and to always kind of remember that, this principle can really, because Maharaj always said to self-reflect, be introspective, and work on yourself. Think it's your problem, everything. And of course, sometimes when people are very eager to say, no, it's their problem, the fault's like this because you do like this because it's like this, and blah blah blah. But really, the most important thing is to look, and if anyone tells you anything, yes, it's my problem. Really, it's so difficult. Oh my God, I went through this in life where people not understanding me were like, yeah, but you do this because of this, and I mean, there is this one individual, because I have a tendency to correct, and he thinks I correct because I think I'm better, and for a long time I was fighting this thing, like, why would you say something like this, and like, why, like, you don't even know me, and I mean, the seniors who know me know my struggles of how much I work, but and then I was thinking, you know what, accept it. Yeah, maybe that's my problem. Just accept, okay, fine. I think I'm better. Just accept it. Then see how you can work on yourself. That's just something. And I mean, of course, there is this also risk that you can totally go off track and go into depression and self depreciation, where you think low of yourself. But they also have well-wishers who are always there to tell you what you are. I think that's also something in my life. I have a group of devotees who really are my well-wishers, counselors, and guide. And it's nice to always have a group, instead of one or two people. And what you have to be is be very transparent with them. Show them your good side, bad side, the dark side, the nice side, everything, which means you transparent, clear. So when these circumstances come and you are in self-doubt, for your personal principle should be that, okay, if someone has said it, must be there in me. You reflect on yourself, and these well-wishers guide who are really holding and supporting you, they will make sure that you don't slide away in the darkness.